get more on these implications for the Chinese move on their currency and turn to Nicholas Lardy. He's written several books and papers on the country's exchange rate policy. He is a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute of International Economics, and he joins us now from Beijing. Nick Lardy, thanks very much indeed for joining us. First, let me ask you whether you were surprised by this move, or do you think that the timing was crucial here as we head towards Toronto and that G20 summit?
I don't think it was a big surprise. I think it was likely that they were going to move sometime between the strategic and economic dialogue that took place last month and the opening of the G20. So I think this was basically in line with expectations.
How much of this was down to prodding and quiet diplomacy behind the scenes out of Washington?
I think obviously it's a mixture. I think it's a good move for China in terms of its own domestic economy, its own self-interest. And if it's done right going forward, it'll also help diffuse some trade tensions, head off trade wars. So it's a win-win for China, both domestically and internationally.
When you say trade wars, of course, one of those people who's been advocating such a move is Charles Schumer there in Washington. Now, he's come out and said he's dissatisfied because this statement from the People's Bank of China does not mention how much flexibility, does not mention when it's going to be instituted. What do you make of that?
Well, I think his expectations are completely unrealistic. A central bank is not going to advertise how much it's going to allow the currency to change over the next few days or weeks. That would be insanity.
Well, with that in mind, okay, when we do actually get them producing some flexibility, people are saying going back to the old regime of 0.5% on a daily basis, what will that do? What will that result in terms of the move overall?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I would expect them to move 3 or 4% against the dollar over the next few months, certainly by the end of the year. That's going to help them slow down their economic growth a little bit. They've been growing way above long-term potential growth, so this will help on the inflation front. It'll help on the structural adjustment that they've wanted now for several years. Less investment going into the export sector, more to satisfy domestic demand.
Will it help out with the global imbalances that Barack Obama keeps talking about?
I certainly think so. We have to keep in mind that China's external imbalance has declined dramatically over the last couple of years. The first quarter of this year, it's down to about 3.5% on a current account basis. So if they allow it to appreciate further going forward, I think that will help to keep their external surplus at a more moderate level, certainly far below the levels of 2007 and 2008.
Nick, if we have a look at, it's not just, of course, the dollar we're talking about here, but if we actually have a look at renminbi, it's been a function of being pegged to the dollar, which has been appreciated against the euro, and we got the renminbi up 15% year to date. How does it behave against its biggest trading partner, which is the EU?
Well, as you point out, they've appreciated pretty significantly against the euro over the last several months, and on a trade-weighted basis, they've appreciated about 5% or so. So a move against the dollar will tend to reinforce this overall appreciation on a trade-weighted basis that has been underway for several months. So I think it's, it's additive or reinforces the direction that has been evident.
But overall, I just want to wrap things up here by saying this is better to do it in an orderly manner rather than a one-off appreciation against the dollar.
Well, you can make arguments either way. I think, we'll have to wait and see how rapidly they allow it to move. In part, it will depend on what happens to the euro, I think. If the euro continues to weaken against the dollar, then I think the case for more rapid appreciation of the RMB against the dollar is a little bit weaker. So I'm sure that'll be one of the central things the authorities will watch going forward as they decide how much to move bilaterally against the dollar.
Nicholas Lardy, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Nicholas Lardy there from the Peterson Institute, and what it means actually for the currency, what it means for China as well, this latest move by Beijing.